Hello, friends, and welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies, a podcast that's listening to the songs of Disney movies past and present. I'm Josh Spiegel.
And I'm Scott Renshaw. Thanks for joining us on this comprehensive and encyclopedic compendium of all things Disney music. Now playing Make Mine Music.
Before we get into our discussion, thanks for listening. No matter how you're checking us out, we hope you like what you're hearing. And if you are, we'd appreciate it if you could rate and review Mousterpiece Melodies on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever app you're using to listen.
That's right. Let everyone know how much you love the show and tell your friends to do the same. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw, and you can read my film criticism at cityweekly.net.
And you can follow me on Blue Sky at Mousterpiece and email me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com with any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share. All right, now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, let's start talking about the songs of Make Mine Music. And to do that, we're thrilled to bring into the show a very special guest. He is a writer who covers film and other aspects of pop culture for a number of publications, including The Reveal, a newsletter about movies he co-writes with Scott Tobias. He also co-hosts with Scott and a couple of other folks the Next Picture Show podcast. Keith Phipps, welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies. Thanks for being here.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm here to talk about music and Disney. Am I in the right place, right?
You are, and okay. Specifically today, making it mine and yours and everybody's, I guess. So yes, we are talking about the 1946 package film Make Mine Music from Walt Disney Animation Studios. This is, as the film describes itself, a musical fantasy in 10 parts, which is a slightly pretentious way of saying this is a package film with 10 separate segments scored to different pieces of music. Some have songs, some don't. Now, usually at the outset of the show in our past episodes, because this podcast, as people may know, is inspired by my love of You Talking U2 to Me, where they answer important questions like, what are the names of the band members of U2? And also, when did you first hear of the band U2? Now, I'm not going to start with some version of that here of when did you both first see Make Mine Music or hear of it, because obviously this film was released before any of us was born, and it is not the kind of film that has been re-released into theaters. So barring some wild twist here, I'm guessing that none of us have seen this film in full in a theater. Here's where I actually want to start. This movie is very unique in one specific aspect that I'm glad that Keith reminded me about a week or so ago. We were figuring out timing for this recording because he noted, oh, right, this movie is not streaming on Disney+. This is, in fact, the only Walt Disney Animation Studios feature film not on Disney+. So, leaving aside the fact that it's not there, but I should note, it is available to purchase legally on sites like Prime Video or Apple TV, and a Blu-ray was released officially by Disney in 2021 via their Disney Movie Club membership group to commemorate the film's 75th anniversary. Here's my question to start us off. It's a bit more about the movie as opposed to the specific songs, but I want to know from both your perspectives. Why do you think this movie is so rare? Why is it unavailable to stream on Disney Plus, if you had to guess? Because we've all seen this movie very recently. What's your take? Keith and then Scott.
I mean, there's really no reason that it should not be streaming, whereas like Melody Time and what's the other one?
Fun and Fancy Free. Yeah.
Yes. I imagine it's no less popular, would be no less popular than those, which is to say probably pretty low on the list of things that get streamed on Disney Plus, except probably people like us, I guess. But I mean, if you read into the history, I mean, there are two controversial elements of it that have, resulted in different versions of it, which I'm sure we'll get into. I believe even the Blu-ray, which was just like for hardcore Disney people, even that is shorn of what in the theatrical version was the first installment, the Martins and the Boys, right?
Yep.
So maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just like too much hassle. I mean, again, I'm not sure why the other like fairly obscure Disney features would be on there and this one would not.
Mm.
I guess I tend to assume, although that seems unlikely in this case, when there are issues around availability, whether it's DVD availability or streaming availability, I'm thinking, one of the songs must have a rights problem. Mm-hmm. That there could be something along those lines. However, I do think that, Keith is certainly onto something. I believe, and I only have the vaguest recollection, was there something involving the lasciviousness of the taking off clothing in the all the cats join in segment.
That would
Yeah.
probably be the other point. Yes.
Yes, that there was something.
The version that was re-released or whatever, has trimmed up a few frames. There's a version you can find online that has that precious 2 frames of nudity of underage stage nudity. I can't understand why this would be possible, why this would be controversial at all. It's really not that big a difference. The other one is the first one is I guess there's concern that there's just too much gunplay in the Martins and the Coys, which struck me as something that if it were an old Looney Tunes short, no one would bat an eye, but Disney is not Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, here's my take, which is I acknowledge the 2 points that each of you has made, and obviously this is a bit more of a rhetorical criticism towards Disney, right? There's the gunplay in the Martins and the Coys. There is we really are talking 2 or 3 second shot of the young woman. If people are You Talking You To Me fans, maybe she's a college girl. If you don't get that reference, you should listen to You Talking You To Me. But there's at most 2 second shot of a young woman exiting a shower. Her back is to the camera, so it's not like you're seeing anything. And I guess the Martins and the Coys is the one that I think is more commonly among people who know the history of that film more, where the gunplay, as well as the depiction of, there's all these different Walter Brennan or Walter Houston-esque, I found a gold mine, that kind of, caricature from the Westerns, all ascending to heaven as if they're ghosts. And I watched it this time and thinking, is the gunplay any worse than the gunplay depicted or implied in Pirates of the Caribbean, the attraction at Disneyland? Is the image of the ghosts any worse than the image of the weasels in Who Framed Roger Rabbit becoming ghosts in the climax? And I think it's that plus the fact that if you're, either if somebody out there listening is a Helen Lovejoy type or knows a Helen Lovejoy type, the won't someone think of the children type of reaction. I literally, as we've been talking, reminded myself, I went to Disney Plus, where if you have kids, I know we all have kids. Keith, I forget how young your child/children are, but younger than Scott's I think for sure. I have a 5-year-old. He has a kid's profile. And if you have a kid's profile on Disney Plus, you know how restrictive Disney Plus can make its profiles. I literally, as we were talking, went to my son's profile, typed in Star Wars. None of the Star Wars feature films, including the original, are on Disney Plus for kids. Whereas, if you have Disney Plus and Hulu, for example, as I do, you go to the Disney Plus app and see as your homepage, oh, good, the bear. That thing I always think of when I think of Disney. The concept of what Disney Plus was going to be when it went live in 2019, I feel like has shifted so much that it's like kids are probably able to access anything. And again, like I'm thinking about Hulu, like next month is when we're going to get that Alien TV show from Noah Hawley, right? Which I'm sure I'm going to see heavily promoted on my Disney Plus app if I put that on. And it's right next to, Spidey and his amazing friends or Bluey or whatever. So I wanted to start there because we obviously will go, I hesitate to say track by track. It's almost more segment by segment here because while many of these sequences have a song or have sung through stories, it's not the same as when we've talked about, the songs of Aladdin or the songs of Tarzan, for example. It's not like 3 or 4 minute bite-sized songs. In some cases it is because the segments themselves are very short, right? There's a segment like Without You or Two Silhouettes, which are unique songs, and they're also pretty short sequences, whereas the Peter and the Wolf sequence is almost a fifth of this movie. It's a 75-minute film. I know I mentioned at the outset 10 segments. Some of them are very quick, and a couple of them are really quite lengthy. And in general, what I was struck by watching the film this time, because I've seen it before, I believe I wrote about the very question of why this isn't streaming because of that Blu-ray around the film's 75th anniversary. What I was reminded of this time is this might be the closest Disney ever got to recreating the idea of Fantasia before Walt Disney himself passed. Because I know we have Fantasia 2000, obviously, many years after Walt Disney passed or became cryogenically frozen, depending on your preference of conspiracy theories. I don't actually believe that theory. I need to be clear. I'm not that crazy. But the point being, Disney wanted Fantasia to be a recurrent idea. And although there are other package films like Fun and Fancy Free, like Melody Time, or films we've already talked about here on the show, like Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. We talked about that with Monica Castillo, if you're curious. This movie really feels like it embodies the same spirit of Fantasia. It doesn't have an opera commentator emceeing the film, but it does have a climactic sequence that is entirely operatic on purpose, featuring a well-known opera singer and actor performing, as the title cards tell us, all of the voices in the closing sequence. But it does start with, as was the case with a lot of 40s era films, this movie does have a title song, like a film like Cinderella has a title song, or Alice in Wonderland has one. We get Make Mine Music, the song itself written by Ken Darby and Elliot Daniel. And I think the one thing that I will say about this song and its accompanying opening credit sequence, which might tell you what I think of the song, is I really liked the Art Deco style opening credits design. That was my favorite part about this song. It's fine. It's okay. It is the least memorable part of this film. I think this movie is more fascinating than people might realize or give it credit for. But for the two of you, did this title song make any dent at all in your awareness, or are you just now reminding yourselves, oh, right, there's a title song in this movie?
I think that, but it's just a table setter, right? It's just, hey, here's the movie.
Yeah. You know, I think this is a good place to set, and I think this came up to maybe to a lesser degree when we were talking about the Three Caballeros and the Saludos Amigos, which is there's a style of the time which just doesn't work for me, and it's that choral, that choral voice thing. It's just that was a thing that they did, and it was very popular, and it just grates on me. There's just something about the sound of those choral voices that just doesn't sound interesting, and it just sounds like an attempt to make something that sounds big and important and bombastic, and it isn't. And I think that affects. This is certainly the most prominent of those. It's not the only example in this one, but for that reason, when it started out, I'm like, oh no, we're going to have one of these, and it's going to be a whole slew of them. And fortunately, that was not the case. But there's just a style that I just am not going to embrace when I hear. It's just, and it's the same thing often, you know, I think again when Saludos, and it's like, oh no, here we go again.
Oh, I still think I like this song, Saludos Amigos. I will say, I like the orchestra version. We talked about that with Monica. But anyway, I mean, yeah, the way that I put it in my notes was, if you didn't know it was there, you would forget it existed. And that's kind of what it feels like. Again, thinking about the opening credits, what I mostly gravitated towards, and Scott, you may have done the same, is seeing, ooh, Mary Blair, John Hench, other theme park veterans. If you know
Claude Coates.
Yep, exactly. So if you know your theme park history, you recognize a few names in the credits here, less for their movie presence and more for what they did for Disneyland.
Ken Anderson, I think, yes.
Yep, absolutely. But yeah, so after that very brief song, there is not an MC here, as mentioned. It's just, you get different title cards for each of the 10 parts of this, as I mentioned earlier, this musical fantasy. It begins with the Martins and the Coys, which is defined as a rustic ballad. I don't know that it's a ballad. The song is a little too speedy, which is to its credit, by the way, because spoiler for later in our discussion, there are at least two different sequences that are very much in the vein of what Scott is talking about, and those ones are definitely real swings and misses for me. Now, the Martins and the Coys, if the rustic ballad part doesn't give you a hint, if the name does not make you think about the Old West, this is obviously riffing on the classic story of the Hatfields and the McCoys, which, if that isn't even clear enough, the title is spelled out in bullet holes, which is not subtle. The song is performed by the Kingsmen, this choral group, and listen, I don't know that Looney Tunes comparison makes sense to me. Keith mentioned that earlier. It is very intentionally caricaturish, very cartoonish on purpose. Initially, it starts with just, again, a lot of dudes who, if the Walter Brennan reference doesn't work, they all basically look like Rip Van Winkle with a cowboy hat on. And these two warring families, they kill each other in hails of bullets. And as is the case with any Looney Tunes style short of the period, it's not bloody. It is very outlandish and outrageous and not at all graphic, obviously. And the second half of the sequence is that there is one young man, one young woman left from each side of this feud. They fall in love. I will say it took me a while to realize this song reminded me, I guess not in a good way, of the Ballad of Rockridge from Blazing Saddles. It felt very much like that in terms of the story is being sung through. There's not really any straightforward dialogue here. If there is, it's very brief. It's mostly sung through, and it doesn't have any profane language like the Ballad of Rockridge does. But it had that same kind of vibe to it, very old-fashioned, a little stodgy. And I think the only other two things I'll say is, A, the gunplay piece of it is really only the first couple of minutes of the short. It's not throughout. And this sequence goes on longer than I thought it was going to go on. It felt like there are a few different natural endpoints that this just refuses to indulge in. So the song almost gets lost in the fact that I'm thinking, you're going to end now. You're going to end now, because I can do my thing where I like to look at a time code, but thanks to some sleuthing on Keith's part, there are ways to watch this, by the way, without having to purchase legally. I would never tell you to Google Make My Music full movie and find a link via something like the Internet Archive or Daily Motion. But having said that, I was watching it via one of those methods, perhaps. And so you don't know exactly how long these sequences are going to go. And I just kept waiting for it to end. And I was surprised it went as long as it did. What do the two of you think of, if not the sequence as a whole, the music within this sequence?
I mean, I feel like, I felt like, Looney Tunes would have done it better, frankly, I mean,
yes.
It's lively and it's colorful, and it's like, it's not like Disney animation was ever, they knew what they were doing, but, and I do like the final gag of the two, remaining people having coupled up, but carried on, fussing in a feud, and as a married couple, I mean, it's corny, but it works, but, I don't know, it's fine. In terms of the song's purely there to serve the story. And maybe another reason for censorship is that Grace Martin, the female Martin, is like a Tex Avery cheesecake level.
Yes.
Not really subtle as to what's going on there.
So it's, first of all, it's interesting that you mentioned this idea of, is it really a ballad? Because it's a ballad in the sense that the Ballad of Rockridge is a ballad, or in the sense that the Ballad of Davy Crockett is a ballad. It is a tale.
Story.
It's not a lyrical, slow-paced song. It is a ballad that a balladeer would sing. And while the animation or the story of the segment is not, I really enjoy the song, and because I think as we have talked about many times in others, I enjoy when there's some sort of creative, lyrical play going on. And I think that this is one that there was actually some attempt at making, fun rhymes and things that actually made it. But the thing that it actually, speaking of other ballads, the thing that immediately came to mind as it started unfolding was the Surly Joe song from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the Coen Brothers movie. And there was just something about that sort of that bouncy, and it's like, and I started going, Surly Joe, Surly Joe, Surly Joe. And there's something about that kind of pace that I really enjoy, and again, just something about the, they would shoot each other quicker than it took your eye to flicker, and that's the kind of thing that I kind of enjoy, even if the actual animation unfolding on the screen was not particularly engaging. I was like, yeah, I'll groove with this as long. And so you're saying that it felt kind of particularly long, or that it could have stopped earlier. It's like, I'm willing to listen to this as many verses as they're willing to get and have fun with it.
That's fair. And obviously, partially, I don't know if in hindsight you feel this way, Scott, but it might also be because this movie really does kind of bounce between upbeat, bouncy, fast-paced, and slow. And that leads us to the second sequence, which I want to note here because, I mean, it's a song. It's a song. It has lyrics. It is not particularly notable, I think, unfortunately. That is Blue Bayou. A tone poem is what it's described as. Now, to me, I put this in my notes. It feels like a letdown for two reasons. First of all, as I just alluded, it is drastically different tonally from the Martins and the Coys. It is as close as you're going to get to Cognitive Whiplash. But more importantly, as you both may know, some of our listeners may or may not be aware of this sequence was actually supposed to be in Fantasia when it was originally conceived. It was also originally conceived to an entirely different piece of music. Do either of you know what it is?
Yes, Clair de Lune.
That's correct. And obviously, now living as we do with Claire de Lune not being in Fantasia, I hear that piece of music, and of course I think of the end of Ocean's 11. But it's also one of those things where I think if it had been in Fantasia, would that have even appeared at the end of Ocean's 11? Maybe I should be glad it did not. But because I have in the back of my head like, oh, this could have been in Fantasia, this could have had a different piece of music to it. I would also say the animation itself, which really, again, it's pretty slow moving. It depicts a couple of egrets in the Everglade. It's a moonlit night. I think it makes more sense scored to music without lyrics. So when the lyrics come in here, again performed by the Ken Darby Singers, on a song written by Bobby Worth and Ray Gilbert. We've talked about Ray Gilbert before. He wrote the English lyrics to the Three Caballeros. He also won an Oscar the same year as Make My Music, but because he wrote the song Zippity Doo Dah for Song of the South, they filmed that. Also is not on Disney Plus, by the way. I don't need to wonder why that one's not there, but I know it's not there. What did the two of you think of Blue Bayou?
I think the animation's lovely. I think it might be, I didn't clock it, but I think Claire de Lune runs longer, and I think it may be, it might actually be a little dull at full length for Claire de Lune, unless there was like a few different flavors. There, I don't think Blue Bayou itself is a particularly memorable song. I do have a little bit of a mystery about this one, though.
Okay.
Per the Wikipedia entry, it says the original sequence is still available, or still has not, still exists. I was looking at some old movie reviews, and I found one that referred to the film containing that sequence set to Claire de Lune. It's the only one of such I found. So I wonder if it was just a critic, just half remembering or just looking at press notes, in which case I call you out, anonymous critic from the Lancaster, Ohio Eagle Gazette. But I suspect it was just a mistake, but it's kind of weird that it would actually make it into a newspaper.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I know that they had, I'm literally going to the D23 website right now, because we know it's relatively official. They do have a space for Claire de Lune. It says that they had filmed animation of flying cranes, but I don't know that it was even in a special feature for Fantasia, Scott, unless I'm forgetting something.
No, I never recall having seen this before. Okay, so first just about this, segment in particular, it feels like, palate cleanser. It feels like,
yes,
we can take a little moment of downtime between the two, upbeat numbers, as you said. The alternating tempos is sort of, again, this feels of a piece with the whole concept of Fantasia, which is, you kind of have movements and you have things that, that in the same way in a symphonic piece of music, you would probably have a largo, and you wouldn't have it immediately followed by another largo. You'd be alternating those kinds of things. But I think I actually haven't had a chance to mention the whole idea that this sort of brought to mind, because I have never seen this in its entirety. I've seen segments of this. I think anyone who grew up of an age that we did pieces of them were on Wonderful World of Disney or in other packages or released, the Peter and the Wolf and Casey at the Bat that we will come upon soon. But it did make me think about the idea of how you can do this same concept with popular music. Now, obviously, this is sort of the style of popular music of the time, but now I really want a version of a Disney package movie with contemporary hits. I think that would be really, and so I just think that this lends itself to a lot of potential that I think was never fully realized. But this is just one of those get me to the next fun one. This is just I'm just ready for the next thing.
Make Mine Music 2026, featuring music by Sabrina Carpenter, T Swift, obviously.
Sure.
You said contemporary music. I'm just
sure. I think that there are some fun things that could be done with all of those things. I don't know. You could fill in the blanks there. You could have a lot of different possibilities. You could have show me a BTS, animated. Why not?
Well, hey, K-pop Demon Hunters is soaring up the charts on Netflix, so they might as well jump on top of that train. Isn't there a BTS movie? I literally today got an email about getting a streaming link to a BTS movie, so it's a real thing. Anyway, that's a little inside baseball. So yeah, Blue Bayou, it's one of those where the come down, and by the way, basically the entire movie does this, where it's like big, upbeat, rousing, slow moving, low key, big, upbeat, like it's one to the other. And I get it conceptually, but I do think it's a little jarring throughout. Because again, the next one, we've already talked about it a little bit. That would be All the Cats Join In, a jazz interlude. There's a little bit of lyrics here, but it's primarily jazz music. Benny Goodman and his orchestra performed this. This is another one where the song stands out less to me than the animation. I think that the deliberately pencil style animation of the characters is really clever. It's playful. I mean, leaving aside the whole, are the few frames of the young woman coming out of the shower iffy? To me, it's not even that. It's like, that's so random that appears that way to begin with. Like, it's talking about jarring. It really comes out of nowhere that it's like, oh, here's a young woman leaving the shower. Cool. Good for you. Congratulations. It's just very odd. I mean, what are the two, like, since again, this is a little bit less of a traditional song, less than a composition. What do the two of you think about this in terms of the music aspect of it versus the visuals?
I'm always going first. I can go first, though.
Guess first.
I was trying to be polite. Okay. I really love this segment. I thought it was really fun. It was like watching Disney's Archie comic come to life or something, I'm very fond of sort of half right, half wrong depictions of teenage culture in any era, and this feels like this is one of those. Like, I'm not in that conversant with like what was cool for 40s teens or whatever, but I mean, it felt like Disney getting it half right in a fun way. But it's so breezy, and the animated style was really cool. And I like Benny Goodman too. I think that, and I'm going to go out on the limb here and say Benny Goodman, a pretty good clarinet player, pretty good band leader. And,
whoa!
Translated really well here.
Throw some water on that hot take.
I could do without the sort of like, writer, the animator making one of his subjects a little less curvy and thus more sexually appealing.
Yeah,
that was
a choice.
A little icky, but no, all in all, I thought it was a really fun segment.
And it's a fun segment. The animation details are, just especially like the dance bits. We've got the, sweeping the head with the guy's, brush cut, and, you've got the old swinging them around so fast that they turn into blurs. But again, all that is animation. The music is great, but the song itself is really uninteresting. And so I think that's the part, as we are supposed to be focusing on. It's like, I loved watching it, but I wasn't really listening to the song at all. It just didn't, it was background for something that was much more interesting visually and conceptually, with the whole, duck amok kind of version of the, we're watching it being created as it's happening. And, and all of those details were, again, not all, because the erasing of the big butt to make it a smaller one was not cool. But, the creating the banister for the little sister to slide down, and, all of those things were just, and so I'm always paying attention to what's going on visually and just not paying attention to the song at all.
I mean, I think what's best about this movie is the way it is kind of like Disney animators breaking out of the Disney style, right? And
yes.
And like, or at least pushing it. And I think this is a really good example of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's also the fact that the song as a song is uninteresting also speaks to, at least in my brain, my lizard brain, of like Benny Goodman, jazz musician, clarinetist, not someone I associate with singing. I associate with performing musically, but not automatically singing. So I think that's also where it's just in the back of my mind of like, oh, right, there's lyrics to this. Sure, I guess so. But I don't really think of it that way. Now, there are lyrics in the next song, and that would be talking about the choral. I think mopey. Mopey is the word that I used a couple of times in my notes for Without You. Dubbed A Ballad in Blue, it is performed by Andy Russell, who has a very nice voice. He was a singer of the time. But it is, if the title and the description of what the short is don't make it clear enough, this is a downer of a song, and not in a clever or interesting way. It feels, again, there's the palate cleanser aspect of it, but in such a way where it's like, okay, I actually would prefer to cleanse my palate of this. I am ready to move on from this sequence. Well, especially since one thing that I was really struck by, I think it's like the last 3 or 4 segments of this movie take up the last almost 45 minutes. of this. There is such brevity to the first handful of shorts. So the good thing about Without You is it does not belabor its time on screen. But while it's on screen, I just keep thinking, okay, move it along. I can see why somebody left you, Andy Russell. I get why they left you. So it's a pretty uninteresting song in my mind. But and I have a feeling Scott feels the same. What did you think, though, Keith?
You drip Andy Russell. Come on. Why would she stay with you? I watched this two days ago, and I could not tell you anything about the segment or the song. I'm really bored by this one. That's So palate cleanser, and you call it a palate cleanser. It could also be like we're gonna make the segments around it look even better because it's not this.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those that feels like I'm just waiting for the next thing. And largely it's because it feels like there could be more interesting things done with this. I know this is a weird comparison to make, but anyone else remember the Bill Plimpton short, Your Face?
Don't remember that one. I know other Bill Plimpton shorts, but what's that one about?
This was in 1987, and it was there was sort of this plaintive ballad about someone singing about their beloved's face and how they just can't. But it's just a single image, and of course, the Bill Plimpton style of this person's face sort of evolving in various grotesque ways. The nose kind of traveling up and around the bottom of the face, and I keep thinking that you could take a song like this. And now I know this wouldn't necessarily be done at the time because it would be too odd and controversial potentially, but you could take a kind of mawkish, blah song and do something with it to make it to counterpoint it. And I just kept thinking this would have been a great place to do something fun visually with. Here's somebody being, and we see the little, what seems to be a Dear John letter unfolded there, and where somebody is so, lamented. But can we watch that play out in a fun way? And so it's not just the song, that the music is a down tempo, but that doesn't mean that the animation has to be down tempo. I think that there was just an assumption that they had to be doing the same things visually through all of these down tempo numbers, and it just makes for a kind of a lack of creativity, which given what we know the animators can do, it just seemed like you could have done something with this that was a little more interesting.
Yes, agreed. And so moving on from that, so again, there's 6 segments left. I feel like at least 4 of them are really quite fascinating and solid, in case people are worried that we're going through a trend here of very few that are really notable. But I would say, so next comes up Casey at the Bat, featuring Jerry Colonna, who people may remember as the March Hare in Alice in Wonderland. He was also Bob Hope, one of Bob Hope's many sidekicks in his various radio shows, which, if you don't know who Bob Hope is outside of the Hope Jobs and Cash meme from many years ago, you got to Google it, folks. But anyway, so technically most of the lyrics in Casey at the Bat are from the poem of the same name written by Ernest Thayer, but there are some unique lyrics here. And again, I'm a baseball fan, so I am predisposed to liking a sequence like this. It's one of the most quintessential stories of American culture, I think. The idea of this big burly baseball player who is called up as the final chance in the big game in Mudville. He has a long history of being a big home run hitter, refuses the first 2 pitches, swings and misses at the last one, and is, of course, comically quite furious at the ball, at himself, at the umpire, at everybody. Again, it's really quite funny. Jerry Colonna is mostly doing closer to speaking or speak singing, a la Rex Harrison and My Fair Lady. There again, even during the bits of this that are not straight out of Ernest Thayer's poem, but it's done in a musical enough fashion. There is a good rhythm throughout. And even though this is a lengthier sequence than even the last few, I think it's really well done. And as Scott was alluding, this is one of those shorts. There's at least one that Scott didn't mention that I know for a fact I saw as a kid, as a little boy who wanted to be a big boy, on the Disney Channel when I was a kid. We'll get to it when we get to it. But this is also one of those that I know for a fact I saw enough times as a kid to just kind of internalize it as a youth. What did the two of you think of Casey at the Bat?
Yeah, it'd been a while, but yeah, this is a wonderful Walt Disney staple, if I remember correctly. And no, it's so fun. I mean, it's a fun one. It is more. It is, you look at this and it's Disney right away. Unlike some of the other segments here, just the way the characters are rendered and the general tone and approach to it. No, I enjoyed this. It seemed like as a fine a rendering as that poem as you could do in animation, and yeah, I say thumbs up to Casey. If we're ranking these, this is so far at the top, I guess.
Yeah, and as a song structure, it's kind of interesting too, because they're almost acts to the song portion, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of the talk singing, but the introduction sort of has kind of a conventional song, "Oh, what a lark to ride out to the park," but then we get the part where Casey appears, and it's all about how all the women love him, and it's like there's just a little sort of segment there that's just all about how Casey is, and again, this is how you know that they're not just taking it directly from the poem when they include the lyric that he was the Sinatra of 1902. No wonder they swoon when he comes into view. He was the Sinatra of 1902. And again, I love the little playful rhymes. But so I think that it's interesting the way that it is taken from a song standpoint and broken up into these pieces to surround the story of the song. The story, the story of the poem as it is being unfolded. And I certainly don't remember the part where he's got all the women crooning over him from the poem, but yeah, it's a fun segment, but I really do like the way that it was crafted just to allow the song to be a part of it. And when it was a part of it, I was really paying attention to the song, and then I could pay attention to the story unfolding in the animation. Then I could pay attention to the song, and I just think that was a really interesting choice, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say of the first five shorts, it's easily the strongest of them. And, the Martins and the Coys in terms of length is closer lengthwise. But again, this is the one where it feels like quintessential Disney, really enjoyable. And
it's one where Walt Disney makes a cameo appearance.
That's true. Yes. There's a lot of cleverness like that throughout. Now, I regret to inform listeners that right after Casey at the Bat, we once again swing to the exact opposite extreme with Two Silhouettes. Now, there is, I would say, visually, there is something interesting about Two Silhouettes, as the title implies, and as the self-described subtitle of Ballad Ballet with an E at the end of ballad this time around. This is it's a little pretentious. It's a little bit more upscale because you're watching two live ballet dancers via rotoscoped silhouette over a song performed by Dinah Shore. Dinah Shore, who is also a major part of another 40s era package film in the bongo section of Fun and Fancy Free. I don't love bongo, but if you know that short, it's a lot better than Two Silhouettes. The best thing that Two Silhouettes has going for it, aside from the animation style, which is interesting, it's an interesting technique to utilize. It's real fast. That's the thing I like. It does not stick around too long, which is good because that's really all it has going for it. This is another one of those songs where I watched this yesterday, couldn't hum a single bar of this song if my life depended on it. Do either of you feel otherwise, or is this another one of those where you're thinking, okay, palate cleansing time is over. Get me to the next, send me to the next fun fireworks factory, please.
It's cool. It's kind of like, it's cool that you can do that. Thanks for showing it to me with the animation. I don't see any application outside of this. I'm sure, I know rotoscoping was used all over the place, but this particular style is like, it seems like a interesting one-off. And no, the song is just vanished from memory pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it does seem that this was a period of time when they just thought, isn't it cool? Isn't it cool that we could have people or the shapes of people in these things? We saw again the other packages that we've seen that's like it's a gimmick. It feels like that's all it is. It's just a vehicle for the gimmick, and the song itself doesn't. And even though Dinah Shore has a lovely voice, I think what was kind of shocking to me is I have this association from having grown up in the 70s of what, I didn't know that Dinah Shore would already have been, 30 when this, thing came out. It's like, really, she was already that, I just didn't know that she looked good for a 60-something-year-old woman doing her talk show in the 70s. Let me just say that.
And I've just learned that Dinah
in that period, if I remember correctly, too.
What's that now?
I think she dated John Travolta, right? I mean, yeah.
Burt Reynolds.
Oh, Burt Reynolds. Okay. All right.
Now, hang on a second. Are you telling me that Burt Reynolds dated John Travolta or Dinah Shore? I know what the answer is. I'm trying to be glib. Sincerely, I don't think I knew that Dinah Shore had a talk show in the 70s. That is genuinely new information to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, I do want to talk about briefly the next sequence, even though it technically isn't a song. It is the aforementioned Peter and the Wolf sequence, featuring the voice of Sterling Holloway as the narrator. We've already talked about Sterling Holloway on this show because he appears in The Three Caballeros. He, of course, is the voice of the stork in Dumbo. He's Winnie the Pooh. He's the Cheshire Cat, et cetera, et cetera. You know his voice, even if you don't know his name.
No one else sounds like him.
Right, exactly. There is nobody who has a voice that I've never heard anybody do a good impersonation of Sterling Holloway. I guess I'd love to hear one, if one exists. But this is scored to the Sergei Prokofiev piece of music about a Russian folk tale, a fairy tale with music, as described here, about a little boy who is trying to hunt down this vicious wolf. It is, again, it's a shame that there aren't lyrics, because I would say this is, I think, the best sequence in the entire film. This is really clever. This is the one where you can tell they put as much effort as possible into this piece of animation, into being true to the music. I should note that originally they did want to include it in Fantasia, but it was both because of timing, because of the war. It took a number of years for this to become reality. But and by the way, the saddest piece of information on the Wikipedia page as source to a book about Prokofiev and Soviet film is that because they didn't release this until 1946 and Prokofiev was behind the Iron Curtain, they weren't sure if he knew that Peter and the Wolf. I was going to say, I would say we can laugh because it's sad, because otherwise it's very sad. But I do think it doesn't have lyrics. This is, I think, the best sequence in the film, hands down. And I wish it was on by itself. They should at least have this sequence by itself on Disney Plus, in my opinion. What do the two of you think about it?
Did Disney do a better job, at least at first, having a lot of shorts there as shorts too? Because I was looking to see if the Casey at the Bat sequel was anywhere on Disney Plus, and Disney Plus being what it is today, I landed, the top result was Casey Anthony's Parents, which was not what I was looking for at all.
Casey Anthony, you guys know her when you think about Disney. You think about Casey Anthony, obviously.
Yeah. Not to sidetrack, but I do miss the purity of the mission of the first block of Disney Plus, But yeah, this is another one I'd seen before because this had been taken out and shown in other capacities. So I hadn't seen it for years. And I think it does a nice job of being the animated equivalent of the piece, where it's kind of designed to introduce young people to the orchestra and classical music in a way, and how different instruments work and what they sound like. And I think it serves all those functions while still being an entertaining piece of animation. This is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one that I probably was most familiar with for a variety of reasons, including, and this will come up again when we talk about Robin Hood, the existence of read-along records, which were a very big Disney thing of the 1970s. And so this was one of those read-along records that we had as children. And so I know, the little introduction of the various characters and their instruments and all of those kinds of things that were from it. And then, of course, did have the opportunity to see it in, Wonderful World of Disney. But it does also feel, and in some ways this is also true of the Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met, which is, given what this format is doing, it feels like it doesn't really belong here. It does feel like it should be part of a Fantasia concept, because it's really not a interpretation of a song. It's just its own thing, and it's lovely, and I really enjoy it, and I like it, but I don't think it should be in this movie.
I mean, I can see that, certainly. I would say the flip side, which is sequences like this, and frankly, The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met, are why I look at this and say this is the closest they came to Fantasia again, and it's a shame they couldn't go all in. I wish that, to me, it's almost a little bit like what we talked about with Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, Scott, where there's certain sequences in each of those films where you think, this is the movie. This is what the whole movie should be like. And I watch this and I think, this is what the whole movie should be like. Because certainly the sequences in Fantasia do not rely heavily on narration outside of the MC. Even the Sorcerer's Apprentice doesn't have any dialogue of Mickey Mouse talking. But this is where it's like, this is the marriage of how far you want to push it to be a little high-minded, introducing kids to classical music and still making it palatable for them, still making it seem less, perhaps, colder or distant like the Rite of Spring sequence in Fantasia. But anyway, after Peter and the Wolf, there is definitely a bit of a come down, although a little bit less so than with Two Silhouettes or Without You. This is another sequence featuring Benny Goodman and the Goodman Quartet. It's called After You've Gone, and I mostly would like to call out, because the sequence itself, I think, is fairly unremarkable. If you know theme park music well, and you really have to know it very well, I guess, in the Rivers of America background music, there is a lengthier and largely faster-paced version of After You've Gone that is really incredible. It is worth searching out. That's the best thing about this short. That's about it for me. What did the two of you think about After You've Gone, or were you happy that it itself was gone very quickly after you watched it?
I must have liked it better than you. I thought it was pleasant enough. I like the animation and everything. And again, Benny Goodman, quite good at what he does.
That's true.
So,
you are on fire.
Oh boy, you need to shut down your email now, because the stuff coming in is going to be so.
all those Benny Goodman stands out there, and
he merely said he was very good. But yeah, again, not the most memorable one, but I did like this one as well.
And I given that this is what we're going to be seeing in the, Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, I'm always up for the, anthropomorphizing of certain things in a fun way. And so again, not that this isn't really a song in the same sense with lyrics as the other ones are, but maybe it also belongs in a different piece. But it's like, I like the piano with its airplane wings, and there's just some fun little bits that's like, all right. I'm more engaged with this. I'm more engaged with this than I was with the things that are just, drippy, abstract, and flying bird that just needs to stop flying.
Well, and so that then leads us to what Scott just mentioned. The final two shorts, the penultimate short is Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, which, if you know your more modern Pixar shorts, you might be reminded of something like the Blue Umbrella. In terms of the anthropomorphizing of the eponymous chapeaus. They've got a fedora and a blue bonnet hat who fall in love in a hat shop. They get separated. They come back together at the end. It is, on the one hand, it's a pretty sappy sequence. And on the other hand, when you have the Andrews sisters singing, here's my hot take. The Andrews sisters were talented and fun to listen to. And that's the thing. It's because they are, I hear them and I pretty much associate it with Christmas music, with, all the different songs they performed with Bing Crosby that have stood the test of time of the American Songbook. But I would say this is a case where this is the one of the rare times in the film where the animation is fine. It's the song that really stands out. It's, again, if you know the Andrews sisters' voices, it is in that same kind of very open, very sincere quality. And just I prefer this style of song to perhaps a couple of the others here. It's not as good as Peter and the Wolf, but I do like this sequence a lot, almost because of its sappiness in a way. What do the two of you think?
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, another more hot takes, but yeah, it's one where I think I was trying to watching this, like, would I listen to this song outside of this context? And maybe not with this one, but it's in the vein of Andrews Sisters songs that I like. I'm glad you brought the Pixar comparison, because I was trying to think what this reminded me of. And it really does remind me of things Pixar would do. Although I have so many questions about the way this universe works.
Oh no! Are we gonna have a Cars? Are we gonna have a Cars type debate here?
More of a lava type debate.
Oh no!
Why? well, that's a whole podcast onto itself. I did find myself thinking at the end, and maybe just my own morbid way of thinking, where it's like, they're reunited, like they were together for many years, like on top of these two horses, right? And I thought, well, then what happened? Did the horses die? Did the hats get worn out and thrown away? Were they at least in the dump together? I don't know.
I know what happened. The horses the horses get turned into glue, and the factory owner and his wife take the hats away.
I think it would have been interesting to have the version of this where you hear, after the horse owner takes the scissors to him, just hear, ah! Ah! Again, questions about the universe. They seem to feel other emotions. Do they not feel pain when they're being shredded by a pair of scissors? I don't,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are these the only two anthropomorphic hats in this universe, or maybe I'm misremembering already? But anyway, I probably dress up as well in these things.
I think this is what we need. We need Pixar to do a film called Hats. We don't need cars. We need hats. Get Owen Wilson on the phone. He can play the fedora. He's got time.
Welcome to.
It does seem like a Blue Sky robots era Blue Sky project.
Welcome to Chapeau Springs.
Oh boy! Now let's move on then to the final sequence, the finale, the whale who wanted to sing at the Met. This is the other sequence that I know I saw on The Wonderful World of Disney or the Disney Channel when I was a kid, because I had in my head, I don't know why, the one thing from this short that stuck with me, and we talked earlier about reasons why this might not be streaming. I feel like one underrated possibility of why it might not be streaming is that at one point, Willie the Whale, voiced by Nelson Eddy, sings Shortening Bread, which is a song that was essentially a black spiritual that was co-opted by white lyricists, because that never happened a lot in music, and certainly doesn't still happen today. The point being, I remembered that. I remembered that piece of music really well, and I don't know. I think probably because Nelson Eddy singing that is just, this is a guy who, if people do not know, a very well-known opera singer and performer of the 1930s and 40s. If you've ever seen That's Entertainment, at least the first That's Entertainment, there is a brief clip of him and Jeanette MacDonald in one of their earlier films. I believe he's playing a Mountie in that movie. The point being, he was a very famous performer of the time, and as the title card tells us at the start of the short, he performs all of the voices in this extended climactic song that tells the story of this sperm whale named Willie, who inexplicably has incredible musical talent. He wants to sing grand opera, and unlike, speaking of Pixar, the journey of Remy the rat who wants to be a chef in Paris, Willie does not have quite as happy of an ending, because this ends with, it makes sense considering opera and the types of, you hear him singing from The Barber of Seville and from a lot of different operas.
Pagliacci.
Yes, exactly. The whale is Pagliacci. I can't think of a good way to incorporate that dumb meme. Anyway, this is a sequence that ends with there is this impresario who can't possibly believe that a whale could sing. He believes that the whale has swallowed at least one opera singer, if not a few, because he seems to have 3 different uvulas, different voice ranges, and it ends with him being killed, being harpooned. But before he gets harpooned, we see Willie essentially fantasizing about his career as an opera singer. It's a really, really weird and distinctive, and I mean that in a good way. This is a weird and distinctive sequence. We have these other songs, these other sequences where you think, okay, it's inspired by the Old West. It's a baseball story. It's inspired by this well-known Russian folktale, versus this is about a whale who wants to sing opera. And I don't know who came up with that, but it's a really clever idea. It's a fascinating, I would say this is maybe my second favorite short behind Peter and the Wolf. And again, it's not some of it is a new song, because again, a lot of it is Nelson Eddy narrating musically narrating what happens to Willie. But there are these pieces of original, of pre-existing operas. It's a really weird sequence. What do the two of you think about it?
Well, I love Shortening Bread. Well, people ate it, I'm sure, but Brian Wilson was obsessed with this song.
Oh.
Apparently, it was one of his favorite songs ever.
Wow.
But RIP to one of the greats.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, is this a great idea or is this a bad idea? I can't decide because it almost feels like, you know, a brainstorming session and like someone showed up with a blank page. Is like, I don't know, a whale who sings opera. That makes sense. You can see like almost like a Pee-wee's Big Adventure, origin story behind this, like where there's a whale somewhere and maybe there's an opera playing in the background. Like, okay, that's her short. It made me sad, I guess. I mean, in the end, I mean, it's a lot of trouble to go to kill off poor Willie. He just wanted to sing for the nice people. But there's lots of clever stuff in the meantime, though, and certainly Nelson Eddy. That's a very impressive feat, pulling off all those voices.
Yes.
And there's a lot visually I mean, I'm sorry, seeing a big whale and a clown nose doing Pagliacci is, you know, interesting. And but yeah, it's a weird note to end on. You know, you're going to send them out with the whale having died and gone to heaven and after this sort of occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge version, you know,
yes.
of seeing his life flash before his eyes that never was. And it's, you know, it's very, it's a bizarre, and for that reason, it really is interesting, you know, both visually and just conceptually. Like, we're going to do this not just with opera, but as opera, and we're going to have him, you know, singing up in heaven, and that's the way we're going to end it. It's like, all right, sure.
I'd forgotten about the twist ending, we'll say. I knew that he died at the end, but I'd forgotten that it comes after here's what it could be versus here's what actually happens. And yes, the Owl Creek Bridge reference is very well made. Yeah, I mean, it's a curious piece of animation. And I think, again, I like it because it doesn't really feel like it feels Disney-esque, but it also feels very weird, very distinctive. And again, for whatever reason, as a little kid, when I watched this on the Disney Channel, the one thing that creeped me out more than anything, and I could not explain why, during one of the fantastical montages of him performing, standing in these opera houses, you see these shots of these disembodied hands clapping and applauding at him. And as a kid, I thought it was the weirdest thing. But anyway. Cover corner. Scott, did you find any covers for any of these songs?
I did not. I just had this assumption that this would not be a place to find a lot of useful material. And so, short answer, no. I did not go spelunking through the YouTube depths to see if someone had decided to do a cover version of Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet. Because, but let me say, if someone had, I would have listened the hell out of that to figure out why they had chosen to do that.
That's fair. There's the After You've Gone cover that I mentioned, the instrumental one that's in the theme parks. People should search it out, but that's kind of the most notable one for me. So why don't we take it out then, Scott? Why don't you take us out?
So with that, it's time to turn down the volume on Mousterpiece Melodies. What's on the playlist for our next episode? As I hinted oh so casually earlier, from 1973, Robin Hood. And while you wait, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. Keith Phipps, thank you so much for joining us today again. I know we mentioned some of your credits at the top of the show, but as a reminder, can you let listeners know where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, sure. The best place to find me is the Reveal.film, which is a newsletter I publish. I publish this multiple times a week and co-write it with Scott Tobias, another long-term critic. And we're also two hosts of the Next Picture Show podcast, which is, if you enjoy film podcasts, maybe you'll enjoy that one too. You can find me on most social media at KPhipps3000, primarily Blue Sky, never on Twitter. Occasionally on a couple other platforms, and also on Letterboxd. And I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Age Cage. It's about Nicolas Cage movies, and it's still out there. The rumors were that it had been pulled from the shelves. You could not buy it anymore, but it's not true. You could buy it.
It's a fine book worth purchasing for sure. So we would love for all of you to listen along with us. Tell us what you think. Do you love the songs of Make Mine Music? Have you seen it recently? Maybe you own that Blu-ray I mentioned earlier from the Disney Movie Club. Do you dislike this film? Do you hate it? If you have any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share, you can reach me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com and follow me on Blue Sky at Mousterpiece. And Scott, where can our listeners find you online?
They can find me on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw. I'm also on Letterboxd at Scott Renshaw. And you can find me at my primary outlet, Salt Lake City Weekly, where I am generally covering all of the new releases of the week. I'm Scott Renshaw.
And I'm Josh Spiegel, and we'll see you all next time on Mousterpiece Melodies.